I am Ibrahim Balde. Join us this week for our exclusive interview with Halifa Sallah, where the veteran Pdois politician outlined his vision for the party and also a reflection of the past, how the Pdois was set up by himself, Seedia Jatta, and Sarr, and how he used to milk cows here in the United States to study and pay for his tuition fee. I am Ibrahim Balde. To Honorable Halifa Sallah, veteran politician in the Gambia, as you all know. So I'm beginning, Mrs. Sallah, for you to tell us about your training regime. I understand that part of your training regime is to do push-up. This is not something that a lot of people know. Can you share that secret code with the audience?
Yes, it is a way of life, and ways of life should be shared. There is absolutely no doubt that as a young person, I had come to gain the knowledge that to be a healthy human being, you must have proper nutrition. So I had to orientate my mind in such a way that I consume what I am convinced will add value to my health and avoid those things that will not add value to my health. Let's talk about cigarettes, for example. I had to look at it and see the smoke and examine the nutritional value of the smoke. I could not see what it could add to my body. Rather, what I saw is something that could harm the body. Then the mind raises the question, why should I smoke? And if I could not get a reasonable answer, then there is no need for me to smoke. What guided me at the age of 18 going on is coming across a philosophical statement that said, the unexamined life is not worth living. And therefore, from that perspective of health, I started examining everything that I consumed and avoid consuming anything that I deemed that not to be healthy for my body. In the same vein, I could understand that the human body would have veins, would have nerves, would have muscles. And obviously, ticking for decades would require constant toning. You must have the right type of rest. You must also have the right type of exercises to tone the body so that it will continue to function. And I applied that principle to my life, and obviously it has kept me going for over 70 years. So I can say that I can share that with every person on earth, that this type of exercise, of course, exercises must be conditioned to the age of the person, to many other factors. And push-up was one that I utilized up to the age of 60. And I had an experience of this type of push-up, pushing up 100, and saw that it was not good for a person of that age. So rather than push-up, you just hold your arm and then lean on those arms, and you serve the same purpose of building the body. So one should not just take exercises from anybody. One must understand what you are doing with your body, because sometimes people harm their bodies in the way they exercise. Either their joints are dislocated by virtue of the serious pressure they put on the joints. So get to do those exercises with guidance of people who know, or you do your own study to know what your body will agree with, and you constantly do that.
So do you still do the push-up, because you said you
a different way? I said you have to hold your arm and put that on the ground, on the bed, and stretch and keep it there for as long as you can. And you can change your breathing also in that. So it's a different way that I use now.
So what is your Gambian food, staple Gambian food preference, your favorite? Is it Plaza, Super, or Domoda? Or, I mean, maybe I haven't listed your favorite food item.
Well, in the morning, anything that is not oil, not the butters and things like that, but anything that will be good, nice porridge, a coarse porridge is the key. Is the best diet that one could consume in the morning, as well as vegetables, especially carrots and eggs. Those, once you have that is sufficient for the day for a breakfast. In terms of lunch, anything that is not oily, because of when you are younger, yes, you may do that because the body can break it. But the older you get, the advice is use things that will be far from being oily. And too much fatty food at that age, at my age, is very detrimental to health. So things that have greens, that have vegetables, that is the diet. Less also meat, eat just a little piece rather than thinking that you have to eat a whole cow. If you consume those type of food, clearly it can lead to health break. I think that's why we have all this diabetes and hypertension, because of too much oily food, too much carbohydrates without proper balance. Food, you need to balance it. Eat each part, but eat according to the measure of your body. Don't overeat. And I believe that will be sufficient to maintain good health.
Okay, growing up in the Gambia and partly educated in the Gambia until later years when you traveled to the US for your first degree, I wanted to know, take you back to the Gambia, growing up in communities in the Gambia where people socialize a lot at Bantabas, where it's a forum for people to talk about issues that are happening in the day and also for public opinion. What actually formed your public opinion from the initial state you were in the Gambia as a teenager?
Well, I did not spend much time as a teenager in the Gambia. I left here when I was 17 and a half and spent most of my time in the United States. I went to a boarding school, Rabun Gap, at the age of 17 and a half. But my earlier days, we were a very much nurtured family with parents who really cared, especially a father who was educated and was very concerned with our upbringing. So we were lucky in that instance. Our minds were nourished by the poems he used to utter, the proverbs he used to pronounce, give every man thy ear, fuel thy voice. So things of that nature, speak the truth, speak it ever, cause it what it will. He who hides the wrong he did, does the wrong thing still, those type of things were recited, and we came to fully understand the importance of character, the importance of values. I remember my mother, who did not go to school, but she was as educated as my father in terms of upbringing. And at night, we do not go out. By 7, we were at home in our earlier years, and therefore we didn't have television and all this. So the parents provided the education and the entertainment. Every night, I remember my mother calling all of us, and we sat down, and the stories were most profound. In fact, I was invited to one program, somebody book launch, and I narrated 2 stories, and I will share that with you, showing a person who was extremely rich at a given stage, and then people will come to him who are poor, and then he will make them dance. And there was this, I will not mention the nationality of the person who came, but usually in Gambia, those were the people handling shops. So the person came, and the old man, who was very rich, decided to get him to dance and sing so that they will laugh. Then he said, at dinner, they wonga, the wonga, at dinner, they wonga, the watch it. Then they will clap and laugh. But then after a few years, the person who was selling in that shop was not saving the money, but just eating and drinking and being merry until he became bankrupt. And he became visually impaired. Because of that poverty, he also started begging, just like that person used to do. And eventually came to that person one day, and the person was surprised that the person who had offered him something at that time was now in the same state that he was. Then they sat down, and he gave him all the good treatment that a human being deserves, fit for a human being. And afterwards, just mention the song, Adina de Wonga, and did not complete it. And the person became so overwhelmed with the treatment that he was given by a person he maltreated. And then they became brother in goodness, brother in promoting the common good. You see, there we were being taught values. I remember also, when we were young, we were reading these story books, Tassus and Tissues. These are European fables where you see somebody who had to save a whole nation by fighting this, that 8 people who went to rivers, etc. So, but our own culture also, we had similar things. I remember my mother talking about a herd boy whose mother passed away, and he was being reared by a stepmother who wanted to inherit the whole herd that the father had. And therefore, that stepmother wanted this child to take the cattle to a river where there was a beast that will allow you not to return again. Only the cattle will run coming back home. So the mother of this child's stepmother decided to push this child to go to the river. But there was this bull that led the way in the culture with supernatural powers and will save the child whenever they go and drink. But the mother could not believe that, because the fable is that no living human being can face such a blessing. Then you see my mother sing, Masama sama sama ya ile sami, Masamo fuga by the sami, Masama walo ya ile sami. Then this mythical bull will say, Mbugari, Mbugari, Teyunani ke jijar. So in the final, assault of the stepmother, that you are not going to this place, you must go now. And the father will also attack him. This time the child cried and said, well, okay, I will go. The bull said, let's go. This time we'll give them a proof. And the child followed the bull. The bull entered the water, just to cut the story short, entered the water, and the water changed color until it was red. So it was clear that the bull has killed this beast. And then it was taken out, and then the child put it in a bag, and then they started singing and coming. And when they arrived, they took it out, and the mother froze and became a tree, and a tree with thorns, and they tell us the stadium tree came into being that way. You see, this were the way that parents who care injected values in us, sympathy in us. You will see when the stepmother is maltreating this child, you will feel it. You will feel the suffering of the child. You will see that this child may perish in the face of that beast, but ultimately come home victorious. So, in short, as a child, we grew up with that love, and we also integrated in the community where some were farmers. So, because we were a bit privileged that our father was working in a public service. So, by so doing, we went with our friends to their farms, work in their farms, and build up linkages. We run sport, etc. So that's how we spent our childhood. But we were well sheltered by our parents.
Okay.
And well prepared for it.
We would want, I would like to know how you met Sarr and Seedia to set up Pdois. Were you like-minded individuals who had similar ideologies, similar home training, similar worldviews?
I must say that at the age of 16, a year before I left to go to the United States, I attended a symposium at Crab Island School, and it was addressed by Stokely Carmichael, and he was the head of the Black Power movement at that time in the US. He came to search for his roots and went to Guinea and was very fond of Nkrumah, and therefore built a real relationship with that camp. He was married to Maria Makeba, a famous South African singer, and they came together to the Gambia. So when I listened to him speak, I was so inspired that I could memorize the very things he was saying. I remember as young people, we did not have that privilege, but most of our peers used to go and watch this cowboy and Indian film. And then when he mentioned something, it struck, because young people used to explain, narrate what they saw in these films to those who would not come out at night. So it became very exciting. Some became real storytellers. But what he said was that these people will kill the Indians and do all sorts of harm to them, and eventually come and romanticize their history as the history of cowboys and Indians. So that romanticization of the life of those who are oppressing, and we tend to identify with the life of those who are oppressing, and in fact look at the Indian as an inferior person, really struck in the very being that I was raised to be. I could feel, just as I said, my mother injected me a hatred for oppression. And here I was hearing somebody telling me that oppression was real. It's not fable, it's not story. That there were bosses you cannot at that time even sit in a bus with a white person. So what he narrated was so obnoxious that I felt it. I felt every statement that he narrated, and I could identify with him. So I made a commitment that he mentioned the suffering of people in the US, people of African descent. But around me, I could see the same suffering in the Gambia. That Africa, despite our independence, had not escaped the trappings that he mentioned that people of African descent were experiencing in that part of the world. So I made a commitment that the commitment he made to sign a contract with people and continent, I will make. And whatever I will do in my life, that will be my focus. So I made a commitment at a very early age to be committed to continent and people. to country and people. And I left the Gambia with that mindset. I went to Rabon Gap. It was a boarding school for mainly rich Americans and middle-class Americans. And I came from Africa. And I had to work and study. I would wake up 3 o'clock in the morning, went to the farm, milk cows, and then go to school. So nobody gave me free lunch in the United States. I was a child worker. I worked for my education. And that built me up as a human being. I didn't regret going there because I was never in the farm in the Gambia. So I accepted my destiny there. But one thing that also became very prominent, I was the only Black person in that school. And I have had to defend the integrity of a race. To defend that human race is a race of all. And nobody will ever reduce me to be somebody who is out of that human race. Rather, if you think that you are better than me, then you are not a human being. You are the one who is expunged from the human race, not me. So I went with that psyche, and nobody could discriminate me in the United States. In that school, since I had to uphold the dignity of a people belonging to the human race, I had to show what a human being must be: intelligent, person with integrity, a person who nobody can subjugate, a person who nobody can look down on. That is the image I showed in that school. They had sometimes memorization competition. I will win the memorization competition. Sometimes they had debates. I would be vocal to display it to a point that they held me in high esteem and showing that Africans are intelligent. In fact, I had one experience there, a girl who seemed to have been brought up in Ghana, I cannot be too sure, but was brought to the school, which was a boarding school, but the parents were missionaries. And she would show some of the films that they had where the parents were being taken on the shoulders of people across rivers, so you couldn't see the type of life she saw in Africa. And initially, she did not want to be an African. And you could see that she had this identity issues. But when she saw integrate into the community of children with peers, demonstrating intelligence and integrity, ultimately she said, "We are the Africans." She was proud to display her identity as an African, even though she was a white, American. So my conclusion there is, I went with a mindset, and that mindset controlled how I learned in America. I remember my anthropology class. Our teacher once brought books written by anthropologists on Indians, they call them Native Americans in that part of the world. And you will see them the way they dress in the rainforest. Then they started educating us that this is their culture which should not be disturbed, that the witchcraft, all this were indicated. But I had read Nkrumah, who said that Africa is not poor. Africa is impoverished by centuries of exploitation and domination. That was ingrained, that quotation was ingrained in my brain. So therefore, when the teacher taught us this, I said, no, this is not their culture. These people have been dehumanized by centuries of exploitation and domination. The teacher fanned back and then started calculating what I have said. He said, repeat what you have said. I said, this is not their culture. This is a dwarfed culture. It's a culture that is due to them because of centuries of exploitation and domination. Then he laughed. So the teacher became my friend. And they began to separate me from the rest of the students. And I remember my sociology classes. I really hold those teachers in high esteem because they believed in me. They believed in what I said because I believe in what I was saying. So to answer your question, I continue to read as I develop my education. I also knew that what I was being taught was just helping me to understand ideas, but it was not helping me to understand Africa and to solve its problems. And I could not get the materials that I needed until I got into Howard University. After finishing, I finished my education in 3 years. I was just 23, or 22 when I finished in School of the Ozarks, and then went to Howard University to a joint PhD MA program. I joined in that program so that I'll move fast and come back, because my intention was to finish school quickly and come back. But there, I could see that the information that I thought I could get from Howard, I could not get. And eventually I was informed that some African intellectuals had a study group. So I went to join the study group. I met people like Dr. Karikari, he's passed away, but he was from the Badibos. So we all joined hands in that study group to start learning. And we got into all sorts of literature from all countries in the world in order to expand the horizon of our minds. And it is there that I met in our study group Professor Karikari, Kwame Karikari, who later became the head of the Media Foundation in Ghana. Yeah. So we were in the same group there. So he knew Sarr in London, because these people used to travel all over, because the mind was African intellectuals must commit class suicide, just like Cabral said, and come and be the intelligentsia of a population that was still under subjugation. So our mission was to learn new things and unlearn what we learned in order to prepare ourselves to serve the continent. And somewhere from Senegal, from Eritrea, from all over. A person like Dr. Kasahoun is now in the United States. He's in fact running a publishing house, Kasahoun Chokole, if I can pronounce. I'm not sure whether I'm pronouncing it correctly. But to answer your question, it is Kwame Karikari who introduced me to Sarr and said that he is in the Gambia, and he is definitely someone who should be linked up. And that's how I linked up with Sarr. Sarr also knew Seedia. They were linked up. Seedia was in France, and I believe they were linked up there also somehow. So it is Sarr who linked me to Seedia. So in short, it is young African intellectuals in their 20s, from their early 20s, who made a commitment to continent and people, and so that it was their obligation to learn the right things that they will be able to implant in their countries in order to facilitate a continental transformation that brought us together.
So, in a nutshell, how did you frame your party to socialist leanings at a time when capitalism was the dominant force and still remains to be the dominant force in the Gambia? It was a breakaway. How? Tell me the orientation. What made you come up with this ideology?
You may ask this question to everybody. Now, I'm not talking about Pdois thinking and how it came to the idea of being the party it is. What I must tell you is that my orientation is not the ideological aspect that most people talk about. Because you say ideology, study of ideas. What ideas? So for me, I grew up to seek knowledge. And therefore, I had a very scientific orientation. I sought knowledge. As I usually define, that social science is the study of facts and factors. You have to know the facts. So for me, Studying the facts enabled me to understand that our countries moved from colonialism to become independent. Why? So that we can have self-reliant and self-determined development. It was clear that being independent means that each of us is an owner of our continent, of our country. So I was convinced that the starting point is to own the country, but to see that our country is part of the continent and also move to own the continent. What does ownership mean? It means that the land, it means that the ocean, it means that the airspace belongs to all of us. So for me, the Pan-African program was so clear, and that is what most people are still ignorant of. And that is why they even talk about, capitalism. The Pan-African program was so clear that it was induced in me. And I could see my society very clearly right before me. Number one, that the land and all the natural resources must be in the hands of the people. And the people must use as much land as they can profitably put into use. And you will allow investment from the external only if the people cannot use it. And if you allow that investment, those concessions must be limited by time, because you may get the competence ultimately to be able to use that land. So limited by time to your capacity to use it. And then you must tax those people who you allow to invest in your country, tax them in such a way that that tax money you'll be able to use for social services, education, health, and general development. So to me, no government on earth can be nothing but a socialist government. Why? Because the Pan-Africanist says government must exist for the people and not the people for government. How can a government exist for the people? Is to ensure that what is in the ocean comes back to the people, what comes from the land comes back to the people, what you can generate from the air and airspace comes back to the people. That's elementary, that's simple. So therefore, the policy of government must be orientated to be able to remove the people from poverty and to ensure that they are owners of power. Therefore, they should not be oppressed. In fact, their rights must be protected. Their consent must determine their manner of government. So democracy is a must for self-determination and independence, because no government could exist without the consent of the people. So these ideas are not troubling, had never been troubling for me. I grew up knowing that when I come to the Gambia, my fundamental objective is to be part of a government, part of a group of people who will find out the level of development of the Gambian farmer and find out what the problem of the Gambian farmer is. Since we say the land must go to the people, I came to the Gambia, studied, I was in social work, I've traveled all over the country. I see these farmers with abundant land, but they cannot cultivate it. And only a few were strange farmers working other people's farm. Some few were also landless working on other people's farm. So these were the realities of the Gambia. How would it be changed? Then we must ensure that that farmer will have seed, fertilizer, and farming implement to be able to farm that land and earn sufficient income in order to be able to build a good house and feed a family. And society must also be able to invest in the productive base of that economy. If we can have fishing vessels to go and fish, they will go and visit fishing vessels in the public image, because that public has sovereign wealth to be able to invest. If it invests, then that wealth will generate employment. You give people the quantity and quality of work that they deliver as due for their earnings. And you must also ensure that what you earn from sovereign wealth will go back and build the community, the roads and all the facilities that are needed by the community. So you need individual consumption. So you guarantee the farmer means of earning, and you have social consumption. The public sector will earn the capacity to be able to deliver the social services. This is what was clear to me. It's not about learning an ideology telling me this is what you should do, and as if there is a blueprint to follow. It was clear that that had to be done. Otherwise, the farming community will not be extricated from poverty. This I knew. Some knew, Seedia knew what level did not matter, but we all believe that we need to extricate our people from poverty. And therefore, we had to group, engage in studies, exchange ideas. Eventually, our ideas flourished, and we came to see the need to establish a political party. So in essence, then, we do not see any way that you could address the problem of the Gambian farmer, the problem of employment without the productive base growing, so that the public sector will be able to give as much employment as possible to ensure that it does prospecting for us to know what is in our land. Up till now, we don't know. We studied and we saw that during the time colonial period, there was a place called Elmenite, and because they were mining Elmenite, but eventually they abandoned it. So the colonialists saw many minerals, but they could not make use of it because they've discovered iron ore, which was better in terms of producing steel, etc. But now you can see what they call rare earth metals, and you can see that what we now have in Batakungu, Sine and Kartong, the Elmenite, the rutile, these are now needed in modern industries dealing with the digital revolution. So in short, we saw the need for the public sector to have invested in those mining, and the Pan-Africanists had their program that, when you allow mining concession, you must ensure that it's not to exploit your country and your people. Therefore, you must limit mining concession to ensure that you have majority share, and you start to build up your equipment so that the share will increase more and more, and up to 90%. You must be able to use the machines to be able to ensure that the wealth remains sovereign national wealth. So in short, I was convinced that there was no any program to ensure self-determined development than this program that I've just mentioned. And we were ready to debate this in the public space, and we spread the ideas. And I believe those ideas have actually triumphed. I've never seen anybody anywhere in any part of the world whom we have discussed with who did not see that to eradicate poverty in the Gambia, the farming community must be given seed, fertilizer, farming implements. Those women who will work in the gardens, for those investors, have been betrayed by their nation. They betrayed the Pan-African aspiration that the land should belong to them, and they should make use of as much of that land as they can profitably put into use. And what we needed were governments that will give them whatever a garden needs, the borehole, everything, so that they produce. And from what they produce, they sell and build their houses, take care of their families. That is what must be done. That is what should have been done. That is what they failed to do. So it's not about capitalism and socialism. It's about addressing the basic needs of the Gambian people. And all these people who call themselves capitalists have no answer to that. And they use the sloganeering to divert the attention of the people from the reality. That is all. But no political party, no person can ever address the problem of the Gambian people until you tell us how those women can be freed from exploitation in their own land. A land that they say their own because they are independent. We are saying those women must be kept there on that land, given what they need to produce, just like they are producing it for the investor and own it. That's what we are saying. That's socialism.
Talking about diverting the attention of the people, some of us grew up understanding that when you set up your party in the late or mid 80s, 1980s, Jawara was accused of propagandering, telling the people that socialism is about you not owning anything, including your wives. How did that propaganda affected or dampen the mood of your party for grassroots engagement?
Well, I must tell you that when an idea is to be implanted, only few become messengers. And therefore, it's very easy to distort what they stand for. And that is why still some people are saying what they are saying. We started as a few who understood the message and whose duty was to spread it to all. And look at all religions, that's how all movements in the world started. Just from an individual or a few individuals, and they grew to be the billions and millions they are. That is the way things develop. A new idea does not spread on its own. It has to be carried by messengers. I think that point is clear. Number two, whether Jawara had carried out any propaganda that barred Joy from progressing, absolutely not. In fact, the old man had the highest respect for Joy. He started a propaganda, but we also really attacked that propaganda in such a way that I would not even want to repeat it. Because I remember my uncles and all came to me and said, no, we don't want you to be that type of human being. It was so aggressive and so revealing that I don't think he, after we said that, would want anywhere to have gone to say what he initially had to say. He had to stop immediately. And I must tell you, all attacks on Doi were stopped, even the Yai companies, because we had the foreign newspaper. So if a Yai company attacks us, immediately we'll record what you have said and we'll put it in the foreign newspaper. We'll analyze it in such a way we'll caricature you. And these people, women had family, their children, so their children will advise them and say, hey, today they put your name in the newspaper. They say, what? You know, Doi said this and that. So that's how we ensure that we became free from that type of propaganda. But that message continued to be spread to distract the rest of the Gambian population. And up to this day, there are people who are saying that Jawara destroyed Doi by calling it a communist. That is absolute. I'm sorry to use the word, but it's garbage. It's not true. Let me tell you exactly how Doi moved into the country. Because we are a few, we had to go to every village to communicate with the people. And I'll give you 3 incidents. We went to a particular village, I will not mention it, but it's throughout the country. We developed a tactic of simply just going to a Bantaba and then speak to the village. Because we understood that the villages were divided into party affiliation. The people who were the cream of the village would generally be on the side of the ruling party. The next people who have some grievances against the alkali or imam or somebody would then be on the side of the fourth opposition party that came to the village. And then others who also may wish just to be important, significant, will join the third opposition party that comes. So if you are the fourth, you are likely to get people in the village who may not be so influential in changing opinions in the village. So they avoided to be in that trap. And that's why many people said, well, it does not have the eye campaign and all that. But what we did was to be able to speak to the village and villagers as a whole. We always, at the start, will go and address people at the Bantaba. If night falls, then we will seek anybody who wish to host us for that night would be able to host us. And can you find something that was very interesting at that time? You will find somebody who is a chairperson of the ruling party hosting us. And then in the morning, you will hear the villagers say, things are not clear anymore about you, so you hosted these people. So we were so easy to host because our message had no insult, had no backbiting, was straightforward. It's a message that was humanizing, a message that was empowering. And therefore, we became the darling of politics in this country. And we liberated Gambia from that politics of friction, of real hostility that existed between the NCP and PVP. So they tamed the country and opened up a new vista for political education and transformation. And not only that, I must add that prior to even establishing the party, we opened, you were asking about our affiliation, what we used to do. We opened night schools and taught people who did not have the opportunity to go to school. And our students were very brilliant. I remember when we were arrested and detained in 1983, we went to Mile 2, and one of the sergeants was our trainee in Serakunda School. So you can imagine the honor that we received, even though we were incarcerated. So that was the impact. We used to hold plays, for example, in Gambia High School, many plays. In fact, the former ex-president, Jammeh, even acted in one of the plays at the time as a student in Gambia High School. And clearly, the plays were injecting in those people how to respect citizens, how to fight false pride, how to fight being greedy. So we were injecting values in those young people. I remember just recently I was speaking to a former student of Sam. Sam was a physics and mathematics teacher at Gambia High School, who also brought the ex-president to a symposium I had in Banjul. And he was reminding me the question that ex-president Jammeh, when he was a student, just coming out of Gambia High School, asked me. He said, what he asked me was, should they trust technocrats? He said, my answer was, suppose you are in a plane, and then there was a problem with the flight, and it appears that something may happen. Then I ask him, would you trust the person who will guide you during that period? And he said, well, it's like it was resolved that well. And then I explained, technocrats must be classified. If we see technocrats as people who study to understand a problem and capable of solving it, then you have to trust such a person. But if it's just some people just talking for the sake of talking and do not deal with reality, then that's another matter. So in essence, I am telling you where we started, the impact we had, in Gambian society. If you were to ask people, my Magi Elect program over Radio Gambia, it raised. I remember in SOS Village, I met a head there. And then she was laughing. He said, my mother used to ground me to listen to your program. And he said that, one of the programs that she wanted me to listen to is because we used to go out, he said, you know what you were describing? Then she explained, the girl who went to hotel, that time they had this hotel close to mile 2. He said these people went to mile 2 and the girl would not go to the market for the mother or do anything because she would feel that the sun is hot, but decided to go to this party at this hotel. Very late, they could not get transport. She had these high heels and then took the high heels out in order to walk. And then they had to walk from that place all the way home. Even though tired, sweaty, and everything, the person felt that she really enjoyed that affair. And all she did was to jump and do everything. So then I started to differentiate. What is the difference in walking to the market and jumping all night and walking from that hotel all the way home, that the person still enjoy it? So what is enjoyment? That is really how the person create that concept in one's mind, and therefore it's mindset that really determines what you enjoy. He said, when I listened to that, that transformed me. So Pdois, members transform people. They impacted on the lives of people. They could not be people who could be isolated by a simple statement that they are communists. We were beyond that.
Okay. Talking about courage, that is often linked to your party ideology and you, the executive members of the Pdois hierarchy. Honesty, of course, straightforwardness, and then message. But there is a critic on the party's ideology by the fact that with all the honesty you manifest and the messaging, and the fact that you understand Gambian issues, nobody can dispute that. But why is the electorate not giving you the votes required if they listen to you and trust you? Because trust is an essential commodity in politics.
Yes, you don't ask a journalist question. That is bad taste. If I had the courage, I would ask you the question, which party, an opposition party, has ever won an election, presidential election in the Gambia? You will not show me a single one. So then who has been trusted? No one. You see, people make statements towards Pdois, but they do not analyze and digest. The system that existed had to be fought because it was a system that you cannot just wake up and change. So it is Pdois that was keeping the power base of that system to weaken the system. That is the work that had to be done. And we had the conviction, that's why we stayed the course. If you knew the people who started Pdois, doctors, high sounding appellations, but many gave up because they felt, well, we cannot wait for this. But others had to stay the course up till now because of the type of political system that existed. It was not based on consent. It's based on patronage. And we could not take that course. I continue to emphasize to people that every single day, somehow, somewhere, somebody interviews me or somebody invites me to a speech and prize giving ceremony or to some book launch. Well, what do you call that? Now, if you were to give me $100 million and say, go and mobilize those people any way you wish, don't you think I will deliver the presidency to you? I would think so.
Maybe.
If it is nothing left, we say that let's moral. Well, yes, I'm saying let's put morality aside. that I just stay in my compound and all the people in the area, every day they come for their copper and dawal and I give it to them. Everybody who, not only fish money, but have a ceremony that I take care for them. And then have my people everywhere who will do the same in all parts of the country. Who knew who President Barrow was? Didn't he stand for election? Did he not lose that election, which was a national, not a but national assembly election? You see, Gambians should be realistic. The power of the state and power of money are very instrumental, have always been instrumental. But we defeated it in 2016. And people are not supporting our victory. In fact, they became enemies of our victory. Our victory was born out of years of struggle of keeping the power base of patronage. We were chipping it. Now we almost succeeded, they destroyed it. Until 2016, we chipped it and we won. We had no money. We did not have a person who was a candidate with any influence. So it is the power of ideas and conviction that enabled us to convince the mass to go and vote to defeat an incumbent who was most powerful and most resourceful. So that was the end of the era that has made it always impossible for the opposition to win based on consent. And that was done with Doi, not without Doi. But many people refuse to give us the credit that is due, that this is the work of Doi. It's not a 3% party, 1% party. Why would you make a person a coordinator of a whole alliance, not alliance? If a 3% party is not significant, why would you make that person spokesperson of a president or coalition if a 3% party is insignificant? So you see, the situation is the narrative. And now we are determined to combat that narrative. That narrative must die. In fact, that is what I am for. For me, it's not about presidential, it's the end of our struggle, which we ended with real victory in 2016. And now the battle is for the narrative. And I am charged with that. There is no doubt between now and 2026, I will be waging a real battle to change the narrative that they have put in the minds of the people, that somehow, because of Doi saying, then that's why the people are not supporting Doi. It is not true. Because I remember during this witchcraft thing, I went to every religious leader who mattered, somewhere in tears, telling me they could not do anything about it, but they were praying for me to be able to do something about it. I was incarcerated. You remember the bail condition? That somebody who is Brigadier General must bail me, or an Inspector General of Police, or a ridiculous bail condition, then you will never be satisfied. Gambians have forgotten that, just to keep me. But why did they release me? Because they knew that that would have been the end of that regime. The whole international was galvanizing. And those people who suffered would not have just sat down and saw me become treated in any manner. So the state had to calculate to put it to an end. So in short, what I'm emphasizing to you is that a coup d'etat occurred in 1994. If we wanted to position Doi, we would have accepted ministerial posts in 1994. I'm sorry, coup d'etat occurred in 1994. We would have positioned Doi, move with those people and say, let's build a coalition government. position until whatever. Of course, we would have had more votes, we would have had more money, we could have been somewhere else. 2016, we could have positioned ourselves vice president, speaker of the National Assembly, etc., and get ambassadorial position and try to position the party. So obviously the party could have been further than where it is. But what is our objective? Our objective is to eradicate the poverty of our people. So if that is not our mission, then what is our focus? Why all these years? What are we looking for? I was just telling somebody recently, when somebody said, well, when Seedia said Halifa may come back, no, what type of coming back, or what are you looking for? You may be like Mugabe. I said that people are dreaming. We went all the way to the goalpost. And there is no goalkeeper. You can just kick the ball and become a vice president or become a speaker and just get close to the president and say, well, maybe now you can go for 3 terms, I don't mind. And then after the 3 terms, well, you live it just like Putin and his colleague in Russia. Halifa Sallah could have easily done that. So if your eye is just the presidency, that is the quickest way to get there because we've already gone to the goalpost. Why go back? Why go back to the other side of the field and say you are dribbling again to get to the goalpost? It does not make sense. It is not position that matter to us. It's not the presidency. Our task is to bring the change that is necessary. And I've explained that change to you. Let me ask everybody this fundamental question. Who will say that those women who are now employed by people on their land to grow those vegetables and be paid bitter would not be happy if we say that that land will be in their own hands, will give them all the tools that they need to produce, and what they produce will go into their pockets. When they sell it, will get into them. Who will be opposed to that? How can that be bad? Which woman gardener will be opposed to that? That they will be gardening all over the country. They'll be given all the things that they need to produce, and what they produce will belong to them. Who can be opposed to that? Who can be opposed to farmer getting seed, fertilizer, farming implement to produce on your farm and pay back exactly what you're given without interest? Who will be opposed to that? Who will be opposed? You come from DTTI, they see that you can transform this course into flour, therefore you will be given this machine so that you can have your cottage industry. You transform this into flour. Who will be opposed to that? That another will be given what you need to be able to buy that flour so that you can go and give it to sell it to somebody who will be buying the bread, buying flour to make bread. Who will be opposed to that? That's the system we are talking about. Who will be opposed? We are saying the country belongs to us. If a mother with the income they have can provide breakfast, can provide lunch, can provide dinner to a family. What about a state that is getting 23 billion in tax money from the people? You want to tell me that that state cannot provide every child with breakfast in every school so that we have every school to give free food to all the children of the Gambia? A state cannot do that? And that's what we are saying. And if the state does that, is it not reducing the burden of the parent in the home? If the parent is responsible for all the books, isn't that not reducing the burden of the parents in the home if the state does that? We are saying the child who is out of school has energy and capacity. Why don't you have 1 year of national service? Wherever that person is going to be deployed, the country will be responsible for the feeding and providing that allowance for that young person, to prepare that person for the world of work. Those who will go to farm will go do the farm. Those who will do processing will do processing, etc. Afterwards, they will all be injected in all aspects of productive life. who will be opposed to that? So I am saying Doy's program, Doy's message has always been accepted by the Gambian people. That is why everywhere you go, people will say, they speak the truth. We still cannot understand why they are not in power. Isn't that not the clarion call? They speak the truth. So how can people say you speak the truth and then people have fault lines in terms of the message? There are no fault lines. The message is understood. It is those people who want to destroy, and sometimes people who've gone to university, who cannot even understand what the villager understands because they don't want to understand it, who will carry out the type of narrative to say the reason why Doi has still not been accepted is because the people don't understand Doi's message. I have raised this question everywhere where we have meeting. Do you understand? They say yes. Then we tell them, well, some people are saying you don't understand our message. Those people don't want the people to understand their message, our message, because they have their interest, and the interest is obstructing their acceptance of the party that has solutions, not only to the problem of Gambia, but the continent. Because the continent is waiting for an example. Okay. 1957 was the example for Ghana. That's why by 1960, we had all those countries becoming independent, almost 30 by 1965. So you can see the wave of independence in 1960 and 1965. So in reality then, I would say that Doy's message has been accepted, but to get support was a state-by-state process, obstructed by coup d'etats and eventually formations of blocs. UDP was a bloc in 1996, APRC a bloc in 1996. They were coalitions of DPP, NCP, DPP. So a single party combating what constituted blocs in politics. That was the reality. But as time went on, we shaped the politics of the country by forgetting about Doy to join coalition after coalition after coalition until 2016. That is the drawback.
Okay. You played a central role in 2026, being the coalition spokesperson, and also
2016, yes.
2016, yes. You played a key role in that process, and your words still echo in the minds of many Gambians, considering the fact that former president, who later made a U-turn after conceding defeat, only for you to say that after January 19, he will be considered a rebel in the country, knowing how, but who Jammeh was at that time, for you to utter such statement really still echo in the minds of people, identifying you as one of the bravest politicians ever to declare, to say such words. But what happened after 2026? A lot of people concluded that it's a battle of ideas, and then in the end, some people were triumphant, and Doi felt that there was no need to go forward, and hence you decide to step aside, your role, or minimize your appearance.
Well, I'm sure that I will be able to explain the story clearly in a book that I'm about to release. It will be necessary to help Gambians to understand what happened. Doi really did not engage in much battle with others. We initiated what happened. And I hope the Gambian people will get the true story. And those who know will tell the true story. Coalition 2016 had nothing to do with whatever political parties did or demonstrations and all. It had nothing to do with that. Coalition 2016 came out of a clear agenda to try to participate in elections to remove Jammeh to the ballot box. And the tactic started by calling the presidential candidates, because in the past, when you call political parties, it's very complex. In most instances, they derail the process. But if you call people who are ready to go to the battle as presidential candidates, then even if some do not agree, others will, then you can go ahead. And that's how it started at Kairaba Hotel, a hotel that was already under the control of the government. So by starting it there, we sent a signal to the government that there was no form of subversion. This was meant for elections. And that's where we started the journey. So to answer your question, we started the journey with people who thought that we were pushing them into something that will serve our interests, that will be self-serving. And they were surprised that at the end, when they chose the person they wanted to choose, we went and supported the person and campaigned for the person for victory to be gained. But I remember when he returned from Senegal, he was properly briefed. When he went to start the process of cabinet formation, he saw the party leaders, and it appears he can explain what he did more than I could, but it appears that he offered each of them some positions, and consequently a position or some position, and consequently those leaders accepted. For me as a person, that was the end of the coalition, because coalition 2016 should have had a secretariat, and the leaders as the, let's call it the party executive, if you want to put it that way, who would have to be consulted by the person who is elected president in the establishment of a cabinet. So if that route was taken, then coalition 2016 would have actually materialized as a coalition ready to govern, a transitional coalition. But once leaders accepted positions from the executive, then you are acknowledging what is in the constitution, that he appoints and he can remove anybody at will. So to me, it was no longer necessary, and I'm speaking as a person, no longer necessary, but to assist the president to continue to know how to manage this transition until an appropriate time is reached. Then, and that is when a cabinet is formed, then my place will no longer be necessary except to be a voluntary advisor. They wanted to make me an advisor, appointed and paid. I said, well, such a thing can never happen. I can always be called upon to give advice. And that was the end of the picture. So I don't think there has been an isolation of Pdois or any sort. I believe Pdois as a party sat down eventually and reflected and saw that what we anticipated, a coalition with National Assembly of coalition members, constitutional transformation and continuing institutional transformation, normative practices change, a whole country emerging under a coalition leadership, that agenda was launched. So therefore, parties just continue to operate as business would dictate. I don't know whether I address your question.
What about the notion of regime change and system change? What actually changed in 2016?
Well, someone asked me that question, in fact, a former male, telling me that he feels that I've been betrayed. But I said, no, nobody has betrayed. In fact, if I were to do it, I would do it again because the objective we attained is what Joy struggled for to happen. People keep on saying, Joy did not get so. We say no opposition party had ever had support to change government. And by virtue of that, anytime we talk to people, they will say, no change can come to the ballot box. That was the mindset, that was the notion. And as long as you had that as a mindset, you just be in opposition for eternity. So we wanted a break. That's why we took part in coalition with people who do not share the same thinking as we do. But at least we share the same agenda of bring about change through the ballot box so that the Gambian people will now be free to know that they have power, which means that they are empowered to express their consent to determine their manner of government. We wanted that lesson to be learned. And I must say that was a major achievement. That lesson was learned in 2016. The second agenda that was also very profound is to enable the Gambian people to begin to distinguish system change from regime change. We said afterwards that what we had was a change of regime. That the systemic change that people saw, which we count as system change, had not been achieved. When I said that somewhere, there was attack from many people who felt that I was undermining the government at that time. And that time, most parties were in the government, including the UDP. But ultimately, all acknowledge that the power, executive power, which resides in the presidency, remains. And the person elected continued to exercise. And the coalition did nothing to ensure that that power is restrained based on the conditions we agreed to support the candidates. Some even empowered the candidates to flout what was that agreement. So therefore, in that instance, it became clear what regime change is. And now every person who participated in that coalition now agrees that there was regime change and not a change of system. So that has been established. So what is the significance of that? The significance is that we should know that having achieved regime change without changing the lives of the people, what is necessary now is to move to system change in order to change the lives of the people. So that agenda is very clear. And that is why throughout the country, we keep on asking the people, you voted in 2021. You voted because of something. Have you achieved what you sought to achieve by your vote? If not, then why did you vote as you did? So if you vote without thinking, then shouldn't you think now before you vote again? If you vote without considering the program of the party, shouldn't you think about the program of the party before you vote again? So everybody must begin to question oneself as to the way forward. So I am convinced that Gambia has moved a step further in its growth as a nation. And the people, of course, are now at a crossroads waiting for the second journey, a journey towards system change. And that is why I continue to emphasize that just as we had Agenda 2016, now we should begin to debate among ourselves, within Joy, as a party, within everybody, the idea of Team Gambia 2026. Shouldn't we begin to allow all Gambians who love country and people who believe they have the expertise to save country and people, to share the same platform, move together throughout the country, irrespective of where they have the objective of being a presidential candidate or not a presidential candidate, but move across the country and speak to the Gambian people about the problems of the Gambia and the solutions of the Gambia, and ultimately seek their impressions as to the cabinet that will be formed. So you will see that before you even get to election, you will know who your presidential candidate, vice president, who will be competent in handling ministerial positions. So you will have formed a government. When I discussed it with somebody, he said, this appears like a shadow cabinet. Well, shouldn't we work towards that so that this time nobody will betray the aspirations of the people? That whoever is there, those members of that team will be more powerful than you. And you must do what ought to be done so that what we all wish for this country, a fairer, a freer, a better, more prosperous Gambia, will be a reality. That appears to be an agenda worth propagating at this very moment.
Finally, Honorable Sallah, what is your take about the emergence of new political parties in the association? These new political parties or new political players seems to be more energized than you people are and seems to be fresher. Do you see that as a trend, in a way that Gambians may likely give them a chance where you people fail? I mean, when I say you people, I'm talking about the coalition government, because you all constituted the coalition. Well, successfully, you got rid of your idea democratically. It was something that was unbelievable several years back. So what is this new dynamics in 2026? How do you think this new threat is going to play out to you, the coalition leaders?
Well, I'm not sure whether there are threats in politics per se, except a threat that emerges from a state, but not threats in terms of political parties. Because if you are genuinely committed to government by consent, and every government has a right to vote or be voted for, well, I believe one should not consider anybody exercising a right to seek the mandate of the people to be a threat to you. That will be irrational. And I hope that no one in Gambia actually thinks that way. And if they think that way, they need to change their mindset, because nobody owns power alone. The presidency is nobody's private property. It belongs to the Gambian people, and anybody is free to seek to serve the people. So to us, it's the issue of tactics. What tactics? I have told you, no single party had ever won through the ballot box. So it's left to the political parties. If they believe that they can go and win through the ballot box, and let them go and win through the ballot box and bring a country for us that we will see whether that's what the country we want. We want every Gambian who wish to build a better Gambia, let them go ahead. But if we rationally agree that to change is almost an impossibility by one party, then you may begin to look at what tactic will bring people together under the current circumstances. I don't know what you've heard and how people wish to do that, but I'm just advancing an idea to you that learning from 2016, the coalition that is just brought to bring everybody together and anybody can come and then repeat the same thing as 2016. Well, maybe you will interview other DOI members. I'm not speaking here as the spokesperson of the party. I'm saying this as Halifa Sallah. For me, having lived this long and coming close to the highest offices in this land and turn my back at them, I'm not looking for any other thing again that will lead me just for people to seek power for its sake. For me, it is power that will change a system that keeps the people in the abyss of poverty. More than 50% of our population are living in abject poverty. Gambia is a heavily indebted poor country, importing in 2023 $51 billion worth of goods and exporting only a bit more than $5 billion worth of goods, with a deficit of $46 billion worth of goods. So in that sense, this is a heavily indebted poor country, over 110 billion, and paying 11 billion as debt service payments. So in that sense, we cannot continue with that trend. And what will amputate that trend is to change the system to make it productive. Both the public sector and the private sector will be productive. And wherever collaboration is necessary, it will serve the interests of the Gambian people. That is really the system that will help the people to be moved from poverty. So for me, whatever contact people have that you call a coalition must be bound by that aspiration to free the Gambian people from poverty, not just remove the government from office.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to say as your last word before we close the lid on this interview?
My last words is what should have been the beginning of my conversation. That you are interviewing me as a sovereign citizen of the Gambia. And our duty is to build a nation. Because the world is very threatening to the existence of the African people. It's a changed world. And we should rethink about our destiny. We should renew our commitment, renew a contract that there is self, but the social self is what makes self. Without education, without health, without all the facilities that supports the individual to be the individual, you will not be. So we need a change of mindset where each of us will see self, but will also see the social self, and therefore sign a contract with nation and people, continent and people, humanity at large. That is the type of Gambia that must emerge. If that new Gambian emerges, we'll be able to build a new Gambia. And that is the task. And I am offering a model. Let's all who love the Gambia have the intellectual capacity to understand its problems, and they know how to solve it, come together as a team and build that team to be a nationwide team, a diaspora team, that we work together to have a group of people seen visibly to be competent, capable of saving the Gambia, and they work to save the Gambia. That is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Sallah. Thank you.